Funding for To the Contrary provided by the E. Rhodes and Leona B. Carpenter Foundation, the Park Foundation, and the Charles A. Freoff Foundation.
Coming up on To the Contrary.
In that critical moment, the women were able to translate both French and English, both French troops calling or American troops calling. And in those seconds, it's critical that your calls get connected so that way you can coordinate an attack that then mitigates, soldiers dying.
Hello, I'm Bonnie Bay. Welcome to the Contrary, a weekly discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Since the Revolutionary War, women have played integral roles in times of conflict, often without full recognition or compensation for their services. Today, we welcome Jodie Grenier as our woman thought leader. Jodie is a Marine veteran, former intelligence officer, and current CEO of the nonprofit organization Foundation for Women Warriors. Their mission is to honor, empower, and provide support to the women who have bravely answered the call to serve our nation. Jodie is currently advocating for a bill to award a Congressional Gold Medal in honor of the female telephone operators of the Army Signal Corps of World War I, known as the Hello Girls. Welcome to you, Jodie Grenier. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Very happy to have you. So for those who are not familiar with the Hello Girls, please tell our audience who they were and what they did.
During World War I, General Pershing had command of the American Expeditionary Forces. And from there, he had the Doughboys connecting calls. He called back to the U.S. and asked to have female operators sent over, which over 7,000 women volunteered. 226 women were deployed and then served in the Signal Corps Army unit. There, they provided connections to they connected over 26 million calls in which they translated both French and English at a rate of 5 calls per minute. When the men were doing the job, they were connecting only 1 call per minute. So when we take a look at their impact, had General Pershing not recruited or the women had not volunteered, only 5 million calls would have got through versus the 26 million calls.
Why were the men so much slower than the women?
Well, I'm not going to comment on that.
I mean, so you can't tell us technically what the difficulty for them was?
Women, back then, there were very few jobs that women, were allowed to do or could do. And so most of them had been telephone operators in the U.S. I do believe that, in that critical moment, the women were able to translate both French and English, both French troops calling or American troops calling. And in those seconds, it's critical that your calls get connected so that way you can coordinate an attack that then mitigates, soldiers dying.
Would they have been able to speak with each other during conflicts if not for the Hello Girls?
I mean, I relate this back to my time as an intelligence analyst. There's this old saying that without comms, without communication, there's no bombs. And so when you do not have communication back to those making decision up to the front lines, you are essentially dealing with lives on the line. And so by these women connecting those calls at the rate of which they did and being able to translate, that basically meant the difference between someone's, trench being attacked and no longer existing, to them being able to target someone that was trying to target them. So essentially, they were a huge component of the war in ensuring that our boys came home.
Tell us how close they were to the front.
Yeah, so there was a bombing in which two of them actually, were killed and made the ultimate sacrifice. So they were pretty close.
Please tell me about your fight to get public recognition for these women.
Yeah, so my organization, Foundation for Women Warriors, is a 103-year-old nonprofit dedicated to honoring the service of our women veterans while empowering their future. So we are a part of a collective effort, along with many other organizations, to steward congressional support to get these women recognized. We see so many issues with a lack of recognition for women who've contributed on par with their male counterparts in this country that have led to a lack of understanding the needs of women veterans. And so our organization is doing doing our small part in ensuring that our community that supports our mission understands and is educated about the contributions that women dating as far back as the Revolutionary War have made to our country and our national security.
When I started covering women in the military, which goes back 35 years now, that there were there were still scandals going on. There was widespread sexism, and while I'm sure it still exists, but not to the extent that it did that time ago. Has that helped you push forward this desire for a monument for their services?
I think that change is slow. And though we've seen progress over the years, that we've also learned not to rest on our laurels, and that though because you make some positive improvements to the culture within the military and to the veteran space, that there are still things that need to be addressed. For instance, women are the fastest growing segment of the veteran population, but they're also the fastest growing segment of the homeless veteran population. I think the military in and of itself is a microcosm for the same issues we see in society. And so when you look back to the 35 years you've covered of women's military service, I think that it parallels that of women's rights in the civilian sector. And a lot of times, even if we think about the Hello Girls, the suffragist movement, they basically leveraged women and approved the women serving in World War I as a way to gain the right to vote. And so I think that there's a lot of progress to be made. But it takes education, and it takes including not just young women and women to know our history, but our society at large. And so it's slow to get out there, but I have seen positive improvements. And even from the time that I served, when women weren't officially allowed in combat roles, that has changed. But that doesn't mean that the services out there are as accelerating as fast as women are serving.
Last time I checked, it was something around 15% of the military services jobs were filled by women. Is it growing?
Yes, it's growing. I think the estimate is by 2040, it'll be closer to 20% of women making up the service. But even when I served in the Marine Corps way back in 2000, at that time, I believe that, women were maybe 5 or 6% of the Marine Corps. And today we're looking at about 10%. Across each service, it's around 15, maybe 16%.
You were in the Marine Corps. Do you think that's the best place for women in the military these days? Or are there services that are, you're got to be pretty tough to be a Marine. Are there services that are easier for women to perform?
I think that I think it's not just a gender specific, category. I think that, I had a sister that served in the Air Force. I served in the Marine Corps. I had an aunt that served in the Navy. I think that it's up to the individual, regardless of gender, to decide what makes the most sense. For me, I chose, that was the first time that I probably can remember choosing a culture versus a job. I was a certified nursing assistant in high school. I thought that maybe I wanted to be a nurse. But then when I looked at all the different branches, nursing was not an option in the Marine Corps. But the Marine Corps' ethos and just the culture of the Marine Corps really spoke to me. And I would say, man or woman, the Marine Corps is probably the most has the highest standards of each branch and will hold you to them. And so I welcome any man or woman who's up for the challenge to enlist in the Marine Corps.
Now, you are also advocating for a documentary on the Hello Girls. Tell me about what you're doing and how that's going.
So one of the things we do at Foundation for Women Warriors is we offer documentary screenings online and accessible by anyone across the country to join and learn more about women's military history through these documentaries. So we screen the Hello Girls at the beginning of this month. We have more to be determined coming through until we can get this Congressional Gold Medal approved. We find that's a great medium in order to educate, our community and really rally support and have them reach out to their representatives and ask for support of the Congressional Gold Medal.
I must say, we used to have our own film festival on To the Contrary many years ago, and we gave an award to the Hello Girls documentary. Please, if you can, walk our viewers through what the documentary shows.
I think the first part of the documentary is really a few historians sharing that they didn't even know the story of the Hello Girls. And I will say that this bill, this is not the first time it's been proposed in Congress. It was proposed, back in 2018. And even I didn't know about the Hello Girls back then. And so the documentary has done a phenomenal job of making its way into people's homes and into, online. So it's accessible and people can learn. And then from there, they detail, just where the women were recruited from, the type of living conditions that they had, how critical their role was, and then how they went home to never receiving veterans benefits. They wore Army uniforms, they swore an oath, and then they were told, no, you're not a veteran. You don't have the same rights as veterans. And there was quite a debate for many years about, what their status would be. And then it wasn't until 1977 that they were actually given veteran status. And you would imagine 1918, 1977, a lot of those women had passed on. And one of the most emotional stories that really comes from the Hello Girls is about how one of the women, said she didn't want some wild recognition for her service. She just wanted a flag at her grave. And I think that's very touching, and it's a testament to the warrior spirit that resides in everyone that volunteers to serve for their country and put their life on the line.
Okay. And with your online screenings of the documentary, have you been able to rouse up support for family members and fans of the documentary to contact their members of Congress and ask them to support the award?
We have. So as I said, early in March, we held a screening and we had over 100 attendees from all over the country, of which we had someone reach out and say that they are a family member of one of the Hello Girls. And so we were able to put them in contact with the Centennial Commission that is working alongside of a number of organizations that are pushing this through. We like I said, we plan on doing more of the screenings. There's also a Hello Girls musical that's taking place up in Sonoma, California in April. And so there's also an effort to identify where the Hello Girls are buried and where they're buried, and put a veteran marker on their graves. There's a website solely dedicated to the Hello Girls Congressional Gold Medal, and it can be accessed online. And basically, we're just trying to, in this collective effort, get as many representatives to co-sponsor the bill so that we can pay these women their due, and so that their families can be comforted that our country is finally recognizing them for their massive efforts that in a lot of ways probably hastened the end of the war, mitigated a lot more of our soldiers being wounded, and saved, thousands of lives.
So what are objections in Congress? Where are they coming from? Is it just the cost of setting up the memorial?
I don't think that there's objections. I think that it's just a matter of making sure that enough folks are reaching out to their representatives and sharing just why this is so important to them and their community.
How many families are left? I would imagine just a handful, if that, of the actual Hello Girls are still alive, right?
Right. None of them are still alive, but the families, I do know that we're in touch with a handful of families.
So their families are still around, and when you say families, do you mean they're the next generation, their children?
I would probably say we're dealing more with grandchildren, great nieces, great nephews, probably a couple generations.
How has it affected their offspring, their children, their grandchildren, for their mothers, grandmothers, great grandmothers not to have been rewarded or noticed or recognized for their service? How has it changed the lives of family members?
I think that, and especially in the documentary, we hear from, one woman who says her grandmother not receiving recognition as a veteran really made her feel underappreciated by her country. And so I think this is like anything, righting a wrong and doing what's right, despite the women being passed. It's still very meaningful, and we're upholding our promise to our country's veterans years after, and making sure that history is shown in the right light.
Can you please talk a bit about the mission and objectives for your foundation?
So our organization, Foundation for Women Warriors, is a 103-year-old nonprofit dedicated to enhancing the economic and personal well-being of women veterans. We do this through a number of programs that fall under our Women Veteran and Transition Emergency Services. We provide emergency financial assistance to prevent homelessness. We provide working and student veteran mothers with stipends to put their kids in daycare, school camps during school breaks, as well as after school care. We also provide professional development and critical goods, as well as connections to other organizations that can help them with things like legal assistance, one-on-one job skills training, as well as finding other resources or perhaps mental health. We really take a holistic approach to serving women veterans.
I know a shocking percentage of homeless male veterans. Do we have any data on what percentage of homeless Americans are female veterans or women who did serve, like the Hello Girls, but were never recognized?
So we know that women veterans are the fastest growing segment of veterans, and that they're also the fastest growing segment of homeless veterans when you look at their numbers. And so, off the top of my head, no, I do not have the percentage, but we know that women seldom self report that they're homeless and that they're sleeping in cars or couch surfing a lot of times because they're afraid of having their children removed from their custody. You know, when you're transitioning out of the military and you're looking for housing and you might have moved and you're looking for comparable work, and then you also have a child that you have to enroll in a new school, find either aftercare or daycare for, the cost burden associated with being a single parent transitioning out of the military can both be financially a struggle, but also a struggle on your emotions. And then you couple that with the identity or the loss of identity that you are facing because you're no longer in the military and a part of a unit that is advancing a mission. You know, you're really kind of out on your own. And so our organization not only provides the services that we do, but we also connect women to one another to ensure that they have a social support network. A lot of times the women come to various distributions or workshops we have, and we provide childcare on site, removing that barrier of attendance, and they leave with play dates for their kids. And they leave not because they knew other attendees beforehand, but because they're able to build that social connection there and feel seen and heard and understood by their sisters. I think that's the biggest thing people miss is that just because women are serving in increasing numbers, it doesn't mean that they're in all women units like they were back in World War II or World War I. Now they're in co-ed units, and they might still only be one or two women in a unit. So they're not transitioning out into a society where they can easily identify their sisters.
The New York Times earlier this year ran a story saying that a guy who was an instructor in how to use grenades never even got anywhere close to the front. He had severe mental health damage from just being around grenades exploding every so often. But all the stories I see seem to focus on men in the military. Do you believe women in the military deserve more, should be included in these stories that are coming out?
I think what we're dealing with is, a society that is slow to understand and recognize that women have now been in these non-traditional roles for a number of years. And I want to clarify what you're talking about in terms of, being around grenades or any type of shape charges or working with any explosives. It's not that they promote some sort of mental illness. It's that you're incurring brain damage, and that brain damage then needs to be treated as such. And so whether it's a traumatic brain injury or you have a concussion, yes, we're seeing that folks that didn't deploy but that are working with explosives have some severe health issues. And when we think about mental health, we need to think that it is a health issue. So I do think that women are being prioritized. We're seeing it within the VA. There's there, at least in the past 10 years, I've seen great advances made, but we're playing catch up. We're playing catch up, and that doesn't mean we're where we need to be. And so long as we continue to have a co-ed fighting force, of which we need to ensure our security in this country, we will see more and more stories. And part of what our organization does is it's not all about the challenges faced after service or faced in service. We also shower and celebrate the women's achievements that they've not only made for women to go into the military and serve in the military, but have been a testament to women's abilities in every industry and have really been beacons of hope for all women.
Thank you for your important work, Jodie Grenier. Thank you for your continued service to this country, and good luck with the recognition that you're trying to get for the Hello Girls and their descendants. That's it for this edition. Keep the conversation going on all our social media platforms and visit our website, pbs.org/tothecontrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next time.
I write women's history, and I didn't know the stories of the Hello Girls.
I had never heard of them. They were switchboard operators.
Home they came, and did they get their veteran status? They did not.
All of the things that we have today, all of the things, all of those rights could come back down to those few women who served our country.
Funding for To the Contrary provided by the E. Rhodes and Leona B. Carpenter Foundation, the Park Foundation, and the Charles A. Freoff Foundation.
For a transcript or to see an online version of this episode of To the Contrary, please visit our PBS website at pbs.org/To the Contrary.
You're watching PBS.